As you can see, possibly in the background, at a petrol station. So clearly the vehicle I'm in is not an electric one, although at the moment, as you may be able to hear, it was electrically powered for a moment there. This is the Lexus is300h. It's a hybrid car. It is a really beautiful car to drive. It's very luxurious and comfortable, and it goes obviously very fast if you wanted to. The electronics are incredible, the cruise control, the sat nav, the climate control, the Bluetooth connectivity, the phone. It just knew, as soon as I got in it, it just recognised that I had a phone with Bluetooth, and it just joined it all together very simply. This is a Lexus, and it's a hybrid Lexus. Now, why am I driving it? Well, one of the things that I've discovered very recently is that even though there's a recession, and even though there's tremendous financial hardship, and lots of people are going, it's very difficult to earn a living, and I'm one of them. And there's a sort of depression in the economy, and there's all that stuff. For instance, the Lexus and Toyota Motor Group have sold more cars this year in the UK than they ever have before, and a vast majority of those cars are hybrids. And you can ask yourself, well, why are hybrids selling so much? Well, they are selling a lot because they're cheaper to drive. It's not that complicated to work it out. This car is what I would classify as a large luxury sort of executive saloon car. It's a big car. It's got a 2.5 litre engine, petrol engine. But it's a hybrid, and I'm currently doing 52 miles to the gallon. That's really not that bad to do that many miles to the gallon in a car this size. You can drive it much harder, and you can get it right down. It's got paddle-y flippers on the thing. You can put it in sport mode and hammer the hell out of it, and I'm sure you'd get much less. You'd probably get more like 25, 26 miles to the gallon. But when you think back to a car of this size and with this much sort of gubbins on board, there's so many buttons. Just touched a button I didn't even know was there. The argument I want to make is fairly simple. The argument I want to make is the sales graph. If you look at the sales graph of the Toyota Prius, which was the first sort of mass market, mass-produced hybrid car that caught on, and you just think, oh, well, that caught on and that became very... No, for years, literally, like 8 or 9 years, it sold some cars to mugs like me, early adopters, but it was very rare. And then in the last 3 or 4 years, those sales have gone hugely up. They've increased enormously. Toyota's now sold over 6 million Priuses around the world. 6 million! I mean, it's a big chunk of the international automotive market. They're all hybrid. All their batteries, which everyone was warning us would be, there's not enough stuff to make the batteries are toxic, the batteries will wear out, we'll have to throw away the batteries. No, the batteries are irrelevant. That would be my argument. The batteries are part of what we will live with in the future. We will live with batteries, and we'll know how to use them properly. Hard turning to find, but I found it. Now we go round the corner. I'm going to floor it up the hill. Whoa! Traction control. This baby's barely staying on the road. Oh, and now I've reduced my MPG to 49.2. Anyway, if I hadn't done that, it would have been good. So when you want this car to get moving, it certainly doesn't hang around. I've really enjoyed driving this car. It is interesting, and the technology is now so refined. If you think of what a hybrid car was like 15 years ago, it was still fairly crude, and that technology was being developed. This is absolutely seamless. So this car now is averaging 53 miles to the gallon, which I'm pretty impressed with, because I've driven, well, this morning I've driven 103.9 miles at 53.3 miles to the gallon. That's pretty damn good. And what that means is we're using less fossil fuels, which in my book is a good thing. A frequent and perfectly valid criticism about electric cars is that the power used to charge them comes from the national grid. We generate a lot of electricity by burning coal and gas. Burning coal is the dirtiest way of making electricity. Everyone knows that. No one disputes it except the Koch brothers in America, but they should be ignored as much as possible. It's one of the arguments Mr. Clarkson always cites. "This is a coal-powered car," he says as he drives a Nissan Leaf. True, you can power electric cars from any kind of electricity, but between 30 and 40% of our electricity still comes from coal and gas. So is Mr. Clarkson correct? Sort of. One of the facts that is never mentioned by car manufacturers, the oil industry, the current government, and indeed Mr. Clarkson, is that we use a bit of electricity to refine crude oil. In fact, quite a lot of electricity. Okay, so much electricity that the oil industry has gone to great lengths to keep the figures out of the public domain. They no longer release the figures, but they did up until 2005. Thankfully, these figures were recorded by the United Nations Statistics Division. Now, it's important to point out that the refining process doesn't only produce petrol, diesel and jet fuel. It also produces tons of hydrogen and a myriad of gases and chemicals used in fertilizers, pharmaceuticals and plastics. When I visited an oil refinery to make an episode of Channel 5's How Do They Do It series, I noticed this huge substation next to the car park when I arrived. Here's an illustration of the thickness of my brain. I said to the camera crew, "I didn't know refining oil generated electricity." I was later disabused of this notion when the head of engineering at the refinery explained proudly that "we use more electricity in a year than Coventry and Leicester combined." Yes, that's quite a lot of electricity. But how much, I hear you ask? Well, hang on a minute. Very importantly, these big UK refineries use so much electricity that they have their own dedicated feed from the nearest power station. In all three cases, the nearest power stations are coal-powered, so they are using the dirtiest form of electricity to refine the dirtiest form of fuel. No critic of electric cars ever mentions this rather glaring fact. In 2005, the most recent year that figures are available, the three big refineries in the UK used 5,600 gigawatt-hours of electricity to refine oil. That's 5.5 billion kilowatt-hours. The best guess of the amount of electricity needed to refine 1 gallon of petrol is somewhere around 4.5 kilowatt-hours. That electricity has to come from somewhere. Just to put the figures into some sort of context, 5.5 billion kilowatt-hours is enough to charge over 23 million electric cars to drive just short of 20 trillion miles. As Elon Musk of Tesla Motors said, we'd have plenty of electricity to power electric cars if we just stopped refining oil. So when it says 120 grams of CO2 per kilometre in the car advert, just remember there's been a little bit of CO2 produced before we get to the forecourt pump. Let's go!